Home of the jealous, home of the magical, Jean's high school, but also one of the most lovable characters, David, who faces one of the most conflicting teenage problems, love. That being with his best friend, even more conflicting in the 1980s. There was a lot wrong with the time, as you can tell. And it's definitely not just the fashion either. Exer is filled with drama and has a secret past relationship with David's sister that he'd rather keep him from knowing, and is more affectionate and more comfortable with him than most, that even others question. David blushes at any chance he gets with Exer, at any waking confession, hoping he feels the same way. Does he love me? Does he love me not? Let's talk about the love story of David and Exer.
Won't you come tickle my feet? I'll be alone, tweaking, you know it.
Who is David? David Miller is one of the rotating side characters in the series Jackson's Diary, typically seen as the best friend and confidant to one of the main characters Exer in the clique, Red, and being on the football team at Jean's high school. Being one of the biggest supporters of Exer and bullying assistant to Jackson, he's a 17-year-old who's liked by many fans for his open and sweet and outspoken nature next to the other characters, whose romantic interest for one of the male characters has been speculated and questioned for a good portion of the beginning of the series to end up being true. But for somebody just walking in, what is Jackson's Diary? Jackson's Diary is the hit webtoon original series spanning around roughly 90 episodes at the time of this video, focused on the new kid Jackson and his rivalry with Exer as the new kid and fitting in a new high school. The hook and sinker of this story is that Exer unknowingly has magical abilities tied to his emotions. So throughout the story, this rivalry between these two is heavily influenced by accidents and magic, having characters cross with each other in conflicts and romantical interest. This story has one of the most, I feel, understanding characters that can resolve issues so very quickly and easily, but start so many problems so easily and quickly. But I feel like that's another video for another day. David being Exer's best friend, they have known each other since the age of 8, and they have always been seen as close and comfortable. Jackson arrives at the school, David welcomes him with open arms, but Exer is the polar opposite, and because of his jealousy for Jackson. He's not the hot topic anymore and can't accept the fact that someone new and fresh is in the spotlight, because he's regarded himself and his friend in the social hierarchy top of the food chain before including future character Ron. But focusing solely on these two, there isn't anything romantically involving them until we receive the information that Brenda, David's sister, was in a secret relationship with Exer. This is because David has always been protective by nature when it comes to his sister, so the thing is, David's interest feels like more of a punchline at the beginning reading throughout before I considered really anything, like jokingly, haha, gay joke, but I'm straight, you know? But it escalates and it's like, oh, this is actually serious. So by like episode 19, Ron suspects tension, which there isn't, but it's a lead-up confirmation. Exer was with Brenda at one point, and it seems Exer is still in love with Brenda at the beginning, with remarks even her being mad at him that she's just such a great person and just praising her, and acting possessive of Brenda even though they're not an item, as everyone speculates Jackson and Brenda's relationship. It isn't until episode 26 in the series, Exer was daydreaming about his past relationship with Brenda and was interrupted by David being playful. Richard and Marty could be seen as this cause that could be this turning point, basically the beginning of their love story. But Richard and Marty were making fun of them. Exer rushes in to defend them, but we see that David's just quiet at this moment. His character is typically very loud, not caring, and he'll say what he means. Like even at the beginning, he was even making fun of Richard and Marty when they like slipped up a bit. But in this moment, he's just silent. David immediately starts blushing after this. Now, this could be when he developed feelings for Exer, because he didn't blush like how he was before. Almost every interaction after this point in their friendship / relationship shifts drastically. David can't help but feel flustered at every waking moment with Exer. Don't believe me? Here's a montage. Considering Exer's perspective at this point, he isn't aware of how David may be feeling at this time. They've always been close, but David is very focused on Jackson and his powers in this point of the series. Flashing forward, Ron, a Russian transfer student, transfers, and David and Exer claim them in their clique. At the near beginning of episode 27, Ron discusses the rumors of Jackson having a crush on David's sister, Brenda. And what starts off slightly an abhorrent reaction switches immediately to joyful. The super protective brother is supportive to a possible upcoming relationship that might not even be be true at this point in their perspective. Exer's in between jealousy and scared of being revealed, storms off, turning into a later confrontation with Jackson, but we're gonna focus on solely David and him. I wonder if Exer maybe speculated that David may have liked him or something, because like how he moved about it, I don't know, it just didn't seem, you know, like you're the brother, you know, like I don't know, I have second thoughts, but we'll come back to that. This super duper close friendship has little holes in it, and it's gonna get bigger and bigger beyond this point. The secret life Exer had becomes a little more transparent, and David has different interests. Flashing forward, episode 44 can be taken note as one of the future many times David felt very confused and left out and actually spoke up about it. And I think it leads to a more snowball effect from this point on in the series. Exer is seen hanging out with Pamela, and he immediately freaks out because he thinks she's spreading rumors about him being a magical freak, and refers to her as one as well in the encounter. You know, it's like I read it, you know, but it took me like, you know, a good 3 times to be like, damn, a lot of these characters are bullies. Would they have bullied us? Like, I don't know. Episode 49, jumping ahead, David jumps into the fight with Exer with Jackson. He gets his shit kicked in, basically. And Jackson comes to the conclusion Exer has been causing all of the problems he's been having, but he hasn't unknowing. I mean, to explain how his powers work at this point, his literal intrusive thoughts like, you know, oh, I want him to like, you know, hit his face. Like, his magic makes it happen, but he doesn't know he's doing that. He isn't making it happen. But David is obviously defending him as he's his partner in crime at this point. On episode 50, as Exer, David, and Brenda are in the nurse's office, David is waking up in the bed, muttering, "Leave Exer alone. Leave Exer alone." Let me tell you something. His sleep talking, if you fast pass, you know exactly what I mean. His sleep talking will be the literal end of him. Literally. Without spoiling anything, I swear to God. Exer thanks him for defending him, but tells him not to be mad at Jackson holding David's face. It's at that moment, people are like, well, do you like him? Because it's like, we're friends. I got a best friend too. I don't know if I would necessarily hold their face. Maybe I'd hold their hand. Maybe I'd hold their arm, you know? But their face, come on. And Brenda comes in asking what they're doing, and like, obviously she's kind of like, oh, okay, well. Exer comes up with some mumbo jumbo. I don't think he understands what he's doing, but at the moment he seemed like a little embarrassed, so maybe he did, maybe he didn't. A dangerous question at this point would be like, okay, side story wise, was Exer maybe leading David on? And this was kind of like what I was referring to earlier. I'm like, I want to go back and look, because it's like, is there like 100% oblivious? I have some doubts. I don't trust anything, I swear. Like, you don't mean to tell me like he didn't have like maybe one thought like, okay, maybe I think he likes, but just didn't decide to do anything about it. What point do we distinguish a comfortable person and a romantic interest? Episode 51, David tells Brenda he thought he heard something from her about her and Exer hiding something from them. That could be a dream. One step for man, another step closer to David finding out the truth about these two. I promise you, if these people just told him earlier, I feel like it would not turn out how it would have turned out. I guarantee it. Actually, I don't know. I feel like he would be really weird without explaining it, like understanding like, oh my God, I like him. You know, at this point in the story, Jackson, pretty much everyone but David knows about Exer and Brenda's secret relationship, and Jackson hints at it towards him during this fight that happened previously. During episode 52, this is a turning point because Ron does discover David sniffing Exer's clothes. As creepy as that may be, this is the first person to discover David's secret interest in him and reacts extremely positive considering the time they're in. He doesn't confront him about it, but it does make him raise concerns to him and Brenda. And I'm going to be completely 100 and transparent with you. I think Ron is a messy bitch. I think he is a messy ass bitch because he is the only person who's literally dark like, oh my God, Brenda, oh my God. Like, I mean, I think he likes Brenda, in my opinion, at this point where we're at in the story, maybe, but it's like, it's the way he's like, oh, you know, like he's always pushing it. And I'm just like, you know, you could butt out, you know, like this doesn't really have, you know, 100% to do with you, but that's just me. That's my perspective. He tries to convince Brenda to tell David about her and Exer's relationship. But the thing is, they have phones that are connected towards each other. It's the 80s. If someone wants to snoop, they can. David wasn't intentionally snooping on in, but was gonna place an order because their mom had an emergency. And all he overhears is, and this is when everything pretty much hits the fan. He hangs up immediately, which signals Brenda and Ron that he overheard their entire conversation. Now, I feel as though almost every reaction and emotion at this point is completely valid from his standpoint. I don't want to throw out the idea that he just wants him and he's just jealous and wants him to be with him, but it's, you know, it's a trust issue as a friend. You gotta respect that. You gotta understand it. David's upset because, well, everyone knew and Jackson almost told him, which wasn't necessarily his place, you know, that. But Exer comes by to his house right after the whole call and and runs into him, and David lets it all out. But the thing was, what made David walk off in this confrontation was the fact Brenda was wondering if there was still some kind of chance. And the red on David's face as he stormed off makes me wonder, okay, so is it jealousy now? I think every reaction from this point in the series, I think is a bit much, because it's like, I'm expecting you to like me, I'm jealous, but I understand the frustration of feeling left out, in my opinion. I don't want to invalidate his feelings, but I feel like it's twice more than it should be. This is the part where Exer is like slowly beginning to be pushed out from his personal relationships and slightly pulling out, because, you know, his magic is like kind of a danger, and like he's pissing everybody off in a way. Feeding into the next episode, I think David is aware he's also part of the problem in Exer's string of drama. David's arc begins to pick up around episode 80, but at this point, his crush for him is still a small part of the story. Episode 66 and episode 67, Ron knows that David still likes Exer. You know, David keeps saying he wants to get over it, but you know, that's obviously not. David does even suggest that Ron might feel disgusted by the fact of what he is, but Ron accepts him for who he is, and it's just such a cute moment, because imagine how long it's probably been holding in a lot of that emotion for that time in those few weeks, and just like finally, you know, like let it out. David then talks to his sister Brenda about what he overheard between her and Pamela, and tells Brenda that Exer still has feelings, and he's lying when they were at the house, and like, oh my god, you know, you don't know there's like feelings, but it's like Brenda's like trying to convince him, it's like, oh, there's nothing there, you know, but it's like obviously you can tell with like how the shots are, it's like obviously there's still something maybe, but he just wants her to be happy, and he's kind of just like, you know, backing out, you know, he doesn't want to make it weird. You know, this is the moment where he settles down and gives the A-OK, which what could have happened a long time ago if everyone talked, but you know what, hey, fuck it, let's make shit worse, I guess. But Brenda is resting assured it's okay. I think this is important because he likes him, but he's willing to let Brenda have him. As they continue to talk, David feels something is wrong with Brenda, and he pities her. Episode 72, Ron asks David to come to a new cafe Exer works at in an attempt to get him to reconcile, but when they come to connect, it's more awkward and they're blushing towards each other, but David turns away, trying to reject a conversation with, and pushing away David. Gets mad at Ron for like bringing him here and kind of like lying. But Ron has positive intentions, but like I said earlier, Ron's such a messy bitch. But then again, I mean, you know, without him, you know, this positive resolve wouldn't maybe have happened so soon, or maybe at all. But at this point, he wants to stay away from him because he doesn't want his feelings to get more intense. A good thing to point and notice is that when Exer does give him this order, Exer's blushing as well, which he's literally never done before. Like, out of all the touching, the defending, just seeing him after such a long time, he's like, okay, wow. You know, it's so great to see you, you know? They decide to wait for Exer after his shift ends, and Ron leaves these two to talk. They're both very honest with each other at this point. David even breaks down at the fact Exer wants them to be best friends again because he missed him so much, even admitting that he needs him more than he needs him. And they even have a tearful hug. I think at this episode, there was a shift in Exer's end. Exer's character has been through so much, and I was honestly so in between by just chalking up, okay, being happy, you know, he's with someone he cares about, and it's just like, okay, a big relief, because it's like, oh my god, everything's going so south in every single corner of his life. But I don't know at this point, but you know, just keep following. Shit gets good. Exer tells David there's something he wants to tell him, something no one else can know at the lake. David is probably expecting at this time a confession for like love, a coming out. You know, he and the entire group receives a map to where to go at this part, and this is where David reveals his power. Nobody really knew about his powers, but they were all affected by it. And you know, it's just been frivolous attempts to tell everyone, and now he's just gonna have like, okay, let's sit down, I'm gonna show you how it works, let's do it. So everyone arrives at the lake, and he's there with Pamela, ready to explain the magic, but as he words it, it's coming off a different way. And we're panned a lot with David, and his word choice about being different and not being accepted triggers David to say he understands, thinking he's coming out. And I couldn't read this part because I felt really bad. So when he said magic, they were like all super flabbergasted and just like laughing, but he was like, okay. Like, he was a little like haha at first, but like for the rest of the conversation in the entire episode, he was like super down about it. He's completely like uninterested. But continuing through the stories, Exer activates his powers and has trouble sending the group flying, tries to bring everyone down, slowly saving David for last. David starts freaking out and starts crying and flailing, and everyone's trying to calm him down, but he's freaking out, implying they aren't really best friends and they don't really, you know, they really shouldn't continue this because he just hid this from him, and it's like, oh my god, the second time, you know. I understand the first time. The second time, I don't know, man. I don't know. I think you're kind of being a little excessive. I mean, you know, y'all reacted very weirdly when he even tried to announce his magic. Like, let's be fair. Exer kind of storms off, and David ends up following after him after Pamela kind of talks some sense into it. And he just feels guilty. David starts crying and runs up to Exer and tells him he needs time to process, and they're willing to make this friendship. I don't know how to say it, and this isn't commercial break.
What's scarier than being the literal spawn of Satan? Not finding a boyfriend as a teenager.
Whoa, what?
He's gonna try everything in his first day back in school.
Damn, he's cute. I'm sorry?
Cheating isn't a good thing, but who says he was?
Why are you kissing him?
Drama, magic, and more.
And stop embarrassing me. Half of their parents I end up seeing, and they're like, oh, that was your kid, and they're like 50.
Quite literally, the son of Satan.
The coup d'etat. I don't know how to say it, and this isn't necessarily what that is. I just needed a phrase that meant like, you know, like a big turnover, you know. Up until this point, there hasn't been a clear sign that, okay, there's nothing furthermore going to happen with Exer and Brenda. But this is where the story, this small side relationship with David and Exer starts becoming more of the main focus. By episode 80, after David admits that their friend group was bullying Jackson to save face for Exer admitting to possibly his powers and how it's been affecting everyone, they're all given referrals and have to do lunch duty. But I feel from this episode beyond, the relationship becomes more of the main focus. Richard and Marty ridiculing them both, making gay jokes, but after the teacher steps in because they're in trouble, as well as Exer confides into David, David almost outs himself at that moment, unknowingly, but blushes through it. Doesn't have a car, but he has a bike and invites him to ride with him. In this period, they're obviously happy, and David is blushing over him. Exer's blushing over him too. It's like, Exer's like a completely different person. It's like, whoa, you grew a mullet and you changed. What the fuck? And as they're both on their way to David's house, David is wondering where Exer works so he can stop by and visit him, which makes Exer blush because David doesn't like coffee. David hits a road bump, and they're at a moment where they're holding each other, looking at each other, blushing. Now, episode 85, there are cute moments between this detention lunch where it's cute, and with the main story, the group is making amends with Jackson. But after that, Ron is talking to Exer, and David's trying to convince Ron he's getting over David. Lies. But Ron can see right through him, and Exer comes out of nowhere, and the whole interaction just proves he's not over him, also implying his crush has always been there, he just didn't realize it. But Ron suggests Brenda getting involved to help them. Ron is a messy bitch for the umpteenth time. Like I was saying, why? I feel like she wouldn't have a problem with anything going on. I mean, I fast pass, so I know she ain't gonna have a problem with anything going on. With the story and its dramatic focus, I don't know, later on, you know, something could happen. I'm scared she's gonna be like, okay, I'm okay with it. Actually, no, I'm not. Or like, she's okay with it, but things accidentally keep going wrong, and it's false signals. Basically, the whole thing that literally happened with David and Exer at the beginning of this series, beginning middle. Episode 88 is where we currently stand, and we're getting more of a focus on David's home life, and that's pretty much where they are in the story and their relationship. Now, David's father doesn't really have a prominent moment in the series up until now. Like, he's appeared like maybe like one time or twice up until this point, and you can tell he knows his son, and he's definitely against whatever, I don't know, his life. I don't know, that or he's just like an asshole. Either that, basically, or he's just the narcissistic controlling parent personality. Like, you're not the image I want you to be. Oh, you're not in football. You're not doing what, so fuck you, you know? And kind of ridicules Exer for dropping out of the football team when he spots them together and they try to talk. Flash forward, Exer's dad realizes his patient Jackson, who was being bullied, was being bullied by his son, Exer. That sends him into like a complete distress. Exer, up until current chapters, is stressed out by how his father is taking it and his magic and almost freaks out. But in episode 82, David's arrival to the cafe calms him down. Let's just appreciate how smooth and quick he vaulted over to talk to him, and everyone just admiring how happy they are. Ron is still the only one at this point who knows about David's feelings, but everyone thinks it's just like, okay, this is mutual, this is fine, it's A-okay. You know, they've always been close, they've always been comfortable, so, you know, nothing to it. But episode 84, it was like something that fell out of the sky for David. An ongoing game of dodgeball, and Exer gets knocked out the game because he's very distraught about how his father's taking everything. And David asks him to, you know, just chill out, you know, drink some water. And it was at this moment, Exer realizes he's attracted to David, and he's literally staring at his butt while he's playing. And he just starts freaking out, and Pamela and Ron are like, what's up? This is the turning. Like, I know the blushing and the happiness should have been a dead giveaway, but if per se David was honest about his feelings with Exer probably would have been freaking out a little, because he's freaking out about how he sees David now. So I honestly couldn't imagine if he was like, oh my god, I like you. Like, you know, it'd be kind of like, oh my god, what the hell are you talking about? What's wrong with you? Oh my god, I'm gonna storm off. Okay, I'll come back later, but I think this this is better, you know? You're understanding yourself before you do anything. If you're one of the people that fast pass, you already know it gets crazier. I think you guys should fast pass if you haven't. But the magic of this story is that the majority of the characters that know of their feelings towards each other are all very supportive of each other. And I feel like it's such a beautiful thing. The characters are all so supportive of each other, you know, despite how different they all can be from each other. Honestly, whenever there was a chance, Exer really tried to be there for David. Before a relationship, there's a friendship. If you're not able to develop a friendship and be the best of friends, a relationship can't progress. David has always been there for Exer through thick and thin, and even though David has dipped on and off from him, one thing hasn't changed: his true feelings for him. Is it possible he may be the last one to find out? Is it possible they could honestly work this out and have something happy? I think unlike all the other incidents that have happened with David, if per se Exer were to come out to him, you know, it wouldn't be negative. I couldn't see it being negative. All that matters is at the end of the day, they still have each other.